Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror, movies, and awesomeness. This week we continue our look at the horror anthology films of the British studio Amicus, the very house that dripped blood. This week we discuss the 1973 film, The Vault of Horror, directed by Roy Ward Baker. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, writer for Rockabilly Online and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Halloween Man, not for free.
Drew has been debating with a lot of online comic book pirates, and it's given him extra pep this week. From Los Angeles, Adam Foshko, screenwriter for the new Skylanders Superchargers, story consultant for Destiny, The Taken King, and writer and creative producer for Call of Duty, Advanced Warfare, Exo Zombies. Say hello.
Halloween Man, not for free. I second that. And hello.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from the one and only attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. According to Wikipedia, the Vault of Horror, otherwise known as Vault of Horror, Further Tales from the Crypt. I think they're making that up. I don't think that title ever existed.
No, it said it was released in the southern United States in 1981. Is that?
As Further Tales from the Crypt?
No, Tales from the Crypt 2 is what they said.
Well, that's the other option, Tales from the Crypt 2.
Okay.
Further Tales from the Crypt. I simply don't believe that anyone ever went up to a box office and said, I would like 2 tickets to Further Tales from the Crypt.
That was the Canadian version. It opened in Ottawa.
It is a delightfully polite-sounding title. It's
2 tickets to Further Tales of the Crypt, eh?
Okay. What's in a boat?
So polite. It is this movie with its many titles is a British anthology horror film made in 1973 by Amicus Productions, like the film the year before from Amicus, Tales from the Crypt. It is based on the stories from EC Comics written by Al Feldstein. The film was directed by the one and only Roy Ward Baker. Now, that's a guy that we have been reviewing probably more than any other director on this show. He was the director of the very first episode that we released on this show. And he was the director of, actually, Drew, can you name what that movie was?
The very first episode we released was Van Helsing, so I think you're mistaken, sir.
It wasn't Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires?
We did do Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires a few episodes later, but we started with Van Helsing.
I just blew my own trivia question. That's the most...
No, the trivia was right. The trivia was right. The order of the films was wrong.
All right.
Nice save.
We've still definitely covered him probably more than anybody else. I mean,
we've done a lot of Hammer on this show, so I think you're right.
The Seven Golden. You know what's weird is that we've never actually done the Hammer Dracula series. I'm getting off track. Anyway, this film was directed by Roy Ward Baker, who brought us Scars of Dracula and The Vampire Lovers. I think he may have done Lust for a Vampire. The film was directed by and is filmed on location at Twickenham Studios, the delightfully British-sounding Twickenham Studios. The film stars Terry Thomas, Don Adams, Denham Elliott, Kurt Jurgens, Tom Baker, Michael Craig, Terrence Alexander, Glynis Johns, the delightful Glynis Johns of Mary Poppins, Mike Pratt, Robin Nedwell, Jeffrey Davies, Daniel and Anna Massey. Those are Raymond Massey's kids playing brother and sister. None of these films are actually from the comic The Vault of Horror. All but one appeared in Tales from the Crypt, the exception being one from Shock Suspense Stories. And there's no Crypt Keeper. There's no Crypt Keeper, no Vault Keeper, no nothing. There's no cane.
There's barely any vaults.
Not much
yeah,
of a
there's
vault
sort of
story.
a vaulty, crypty thing, kind of, but not really.
There's kind of a
Tales
clash.
from the elevator.
Yeah, I mean, and may I say that no one will be. I can imagine this thing playing in Ottawa or wherever it was. It's like no one will be seated during the gripping and very highly orchestrated elevator sequence.
That's exactly what Jason said. That's exactly what Jason said.
Really? That's
yes,
funny.
we love our MST3K references in our house.
Yeah, that was who I learned that from. So I was shocked by that we spend but this is not even a complaint. But whatever.
It just reminded me of that scene in Saturday Night Live when Sting was on it back in the day, Rob Schneider, and he was like, Stingerini.
Right.
And they're like, he's like, this is the longest elevator ride.
Yes. It's an astonishingly tall building. This building that they're shooting in is a place called the Millbank Tower. I have no idea if apparently it is still there. It is 118 meters tall in London. It's a really tall building. Anyway, okay, so let's get our opening thoughts about this film. Let's go. We're going to do something different this time. We're going to start with Julia. We'll go Julia, Drew, Adam, and then I'll figure out if there's anything left that bears saying. So, Julia, give us your opening thoughts, Vault of Horror.
Well, so it's Basement. I guess it's Basement of Horror, really, is what it is. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I thought there was a lot of really fun things about it. I thought that the framing story was, aside from the ridiculously long elevator ride, I thought the framing story was fine. It wasn't anything major, but it was not distracting or anything. I loved the story about the first story with the siblings in it, because, and we'll talk about that later, but there's just the way that he ends up meeting his demise it cracked me up. It was so funny. I love the story with Glynis Johns, who is Winifred Bates in Mary Poppins, and then randomly after we stopped watching the movie, Mary Poppins was on TV, so we watched it too. But I think that story to me is actually, if she was a different kind of person in Mary Poppins and that character had gone bad, this is what would have happened, because her husband in Mary Poppins is exactly like the husband in this movie. He's just he sings a whole song about how at 6:01 he walks through the door and he expects his slippers, sherry, and pipe are due at 6:02, and he's like goes through this whole litany of how things need to be exactly a certain way. But luckily he's got a whole staff to take care of these things. So I thought the stories were fun. I really loved the Tom Baker one. Very interesting. I enjoyed it a lot.
Wow. So all around. So do you think this is your favorite Amicus
of
picture
these?
so
Yeah,
far?
the ones we've done. Yeah, for sure.
Wow, very cool. All right. So Drew, opening thoughts, Vault of Horror. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie before, but what are your thoughts?
I have actually seen this movie. I first saw this movie when I was a kid. I didn't really know what it was, but it was just sort of randomly on TV, and I always remembered the first story the most, Midnight Mass. But I like this movie, and I think it's an improvement on Tales from the Crypt in many ways. I don't like it as much as I liked Torture Garden last week. I think Burgess Meredith just bumps that up quite a bit in cool. But I do like it, except for the last story, the Tom Baker story, which just sort of like trudges along at I found myself kind of having to fight to stay awake during the Tom Baker story, which is disappointing because I love Tom Baker. But, otherwise, I think they nail the EC Comics sensibility quite a bit better with this, despite the fact that there's no host. But, the framing story is so intrusive, it's not a particularly interesting framing story, but it gets the ball rolling.
Yeah, very cool. Adam, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Drew. One of the things I do like about this movie is I think it tends to capture the gallows humor and the comeuppance of particularly bad people in a comedic yet horrifying kind of way, and it's exactly what you want this kind of movie to do. And I think it does it really, not just faithfully. I think it does it gleefully to a certain degree, which is interesting when you think of kind of how staid Tales from the Crypt was by comparison. This is probably, I think, as Drew stated, a welcome return to this kind of movie. But I also agree that the framing device is incredibly uninteresting. despite the fact that I like the actors, apart from, as I said before, the remarkably overscored and gripping elevator sequence down to the bottom. What I love is the fact that you have these businessmen / executives who, when confronted with a vault, which apparently has no button to get back up, but they see a number of chairs and some decanters, and they just make themselves at home and start pouring drinks. So yeah. I appreciate that. It does sort of get it rolling, but it's sort of like immediately like, really, it lacks the charm of Torture Garden with Burgess Meredith, and the thing that really kept that going was, I believe, that the framing device was an active, its own active story that really did drive things forward. It didn't just hold it together like Jell-O and so many grapes. It really did it was as interesting as any of the segments you were seeing. And this really didn't have that. It was just sort of waiting for the next page to turn. And so I found myself missing it. I agree that it's not as nasty, I don't think. It's more gleeful than Tales from the Crypt. But not, I think, so as Torture Garden. So I thought it was fine. It was nice to see. I'd seen pieces of it over the years, but to actually see it, in a completed form, was good. But in no way touches Torture Garden.
Okay, I
can say that with a straight face.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think I like Torture Garden better, but I do really like this movie. The funny thing is, first of all, by having almost no frame story, because the frame story is basically just it is so bizarre. There's never even any real explanation that they wind up. They all get on the elevator. They get off at the very bottom.
It's essentially a bunch of British Donald Drapers.
Yeah, they just all go, hey, we're in a club. Let's sit down and have a drink until somebody notices that. I mean, it's the most absurd thing. In other words, the door is shut. They can't get out. And now I can go ahead and marble no prize it and say, well, because we learn later that they're all spirits, they're confused, and so therefore they're not even going to try to escape particularly. But whatever, it doesn't even matter. The fact is, by getting rid of a longer framing story, they have room for another story in the movie. So there's 4 stories. There's 5 here instead of 4, like we had last time. But what you give up is the possibility of a really, a good personal crypt keeper like Burgess Meredith. Or in the next movie to come along, it's From Beyond the Grave, and the crypt keeper there doesn't ever address the audience until the end, and doesn't even address all the characters at once. Instead, he's a guy who runs a shop. He sells curios, and each curio that somebody buys turns into the story. So I also love the fact that Amicus keeps mixing it up. They're going to try a different way of doing it every time, although there's always these motifs that keep going through. And so that's why I love, to me, the fact that these are 5 guys in an elevator together and they just start telling stories. Even though it's very different, this to me is like there's something so pure of an Amicus setup about that. This is actually the 6th out of 7. So by now, Amicus really kind of has it down as far as these contemporary horror stories. And I'm just so amazed at how we see all these actors moving over from Hammer over to Amicus and back. The directors, producers, everybody just keeps going back and forth. It's very cool. So
now, it's interesting because you bring up a good point. In Tales from the Crypt, they started bringing Ralph Richardson and various people over, and here you have Terry Thomas, and you have a young Tom Baker, and you have did I remember when Dr. Fives happened. I'm trying to remember. Terry Thomas was very popular, not just in other movies, in British comedies and other things.
Yes.
Workaday comedies, and then I know he did Dr. Fives, which sort of brought him into the horror genre. I'm trying to recall whether that was before or after this. I think it was before. I'm just trying to figure out how.
Fives, I think, was I'm trying to remember the year on Dr. Five, but it's around the same period. And by the way, I should say that even though there's a lot of the trading of talent back and forth between Hammer and Amicus, it's not so true here, except of course in the director. I mean, so that Roy Ward Baker, who I think of as a Hammer director, and if I look now at his list, he did Quatermass and the Pit. He's later Hammer. Quatermass and the Pit, Moon 02, Scars of Dracula, Vampire Lovers, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. Then at Amicus he does Asylum, Vault of Horror. Then back at Hammer he does Legend of Seven Golden Vampires. Then he comes back over to Amicus without the name and does Monster Club in 1981. So he was doing. He just kept going back and forth, and that I guess is that's very late in his career. It's also kind of funny to think, he would be the one who would go to China and do Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires.
I do. All these actors are actors I can imagine in a Hammer movie, though. Like it's easy to imagine Tom Baker in a Hammer
film. Sure.
In a Hammer film, it's just like this is British actors, particularly actors who are known for genre work, and of this certain particular time period.
Well, I'm just wondering if they were trying to make it more mainstream.
Well, in theory, they could pay. What the documentary that I think we posted on the Facebook page said was that they could Amicus could afford to pay slightly more for an actor, or to get an actor who was well known, because they were demanding less of a commitment from them. You wanted them to do a 20-minute short instead of a 90-minute feature film, and that would work out for someone like Denham Elliott, who was very, very busy. Then you'd do well. But then, like I say, Cushing and Lee were always in demand, and they would go back and forth. But they're nowhere to be seen here, and it's still.
Cushing is making another Amicus movie while this is going on.
That's right. Amicus at this point, I guess, has just doubled up, because Asylum comes out right before, and From Beyond the Grave comes out right after. So they just they're really doubling these things up.
Was Denham Elliott doing Dracula sort of around this time too?
Have you seen bits of that? Denham Elliott here.
Only segments.
Go ahead.
I've never seen the whole thing.
Never seen the whole thing, but yeah, Denham Elliott played Dracula in a BBC miniseries, but I want to say that was in the 60s. It was in black and white, I remember.
Oh, yeah, probably so.
Yeah, and the really awesome thing is that his Dracula had little square glasses. It's
right.
It's very interesting to see that. It looks like Denham Elliott Dracula. This is 1968. So there you go. Yeah, but he does well.
The Peter Cushing was making, and Now the Screaming Starts is what he was making when that was going on.
Okay. Well, and Now the Screaming Starts. That's that movie is the only Amicus picture where they decided to go Hammer in a sense in terms of setting, because like this film is just like all the other ones. It's very contemporary. Everything takes place like in recognizable flats and clubs and just the world of modern man. But Now the Screaming Starts is a gothic horror where a young couple go to a big castle and everything. It's I haven't actually watched. I've seen the very beginning of it. I need to watch it. But it stars that girl who played Lady Regina on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Her name is escaping me for right now. But yeah, but not much earlier. Adam, the Dracula Denham Elliott, it's only 5 years earlier than this film. But he looks much different because his hair is like dark black. And anyway, okay, so we should get into it though. The first film in Vault of Horror is called Midnight Mess. And definitely this is a guy who in the end is going to deserve whatever's coming his way, because we have a guy played by Raymond Massey's son, which is Daniel Massey, and he is obsessed. He wants to find his sister. He's hired a private detective to track down his sister, and soon enough he finds her in a small he murders the private detective. He finds the sister in the small town, and announces that he intends to murder her because he wants the inheritance. For some reason,
because their dad has died, and she's the one. She's inherited everything.
She's the favorite. Maybe because he's a psychopath. Who knows?
Could be.
But and he acts so in short order we see him murder like two different people, because he kills the private detective he hired to find his sister, and then he knifes his sister.
But his real life sister.
Yeah, but this town that they're in is this, quaint little town, this little village, and after he commits murder, he wants to go grab a bite to eat, so he goes out to...
Like you do.
Yeah.
Well, he goes into the restaurant first, and they're like, "Oh,
good."
No, Julia, you do it.
Well, they're just about to close, is what I was gonna say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
But then he goes. So he's talking to everybody, and they're all like, "Well, we're going to close because it's going to get dark, and when it gets dark, then they come out." Then when he goes to see his sister, she's like, "Yeah, it's that talks about them and how everybody's afraid of them or whatever." So he's kind of like, "Okay, whatever. I don't care. I'm going to kill you now."
Yeah. He gets to the restaurant afterwards, and the restaurant's open. He had been told earlier, "Hey, we're closing," but now he's there, and it's open and full. And full, very happening. He sits down to order some soup and some food, a full menu del dia, and he quickly realizes something is wrong. It's funny how quickly this story wraps up, because he quickly realizes something is wrong, because everything they bring him tastes off. What he thinks is tomato juice is actually blood in a wine goblet. What he thinks is soup is basically very thin blood soup, and basically everything is blood.
And they want to bring him roast blood clots.
Oh my God! Now I have to say that's the most repulsive thing I ever heard of. Like the idea of roast clots, of like a bowl full of blood clots, is very, very. It's a very repulsive idea when you think about it. Especially if you think of clots being about the size of a raisin.
Okay, that's really enough.
Right.
They're like really terrible silver dollar pancakes.
Yes. Oh God.
All right, that's
so yes.
enough.
So anyway, when he blanches at all of this, the maitre d' quickly realizes, wait a minute, this guy is not like the others. He tears open a big curtain against the wall, revealing a giant wall-to-wall mirror, and our gentleman is the only one who casts a shadow. And so the next thing you know, it's the best payoff in any movie version of EC Comics ever, including the Tales from the Dark Side movies.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Who Adam, Drew, who wants to tell us what happens? Because I don't want to describe it, because I've already been talking too much.
This is essentially what I always remember about this: is they grab a hold of him and put a wine tap in his neck and start serving glasses, because it's so much better fresh. And as he is dying, he sees his sister come in, and she has fangs, of course, and she is a vampire, which means she survived the brutal stabbing that he inflicted on her, and she asks for a glass of his blood.
Yes. And he's hanging upside down. He's got a beer tap sticking out of his neck. Whenever they flip the little lever to pour blood, his neck sort of twitches. It's just absurd.
His whole body twitches,
his body twitches. It is a horrible image. And
it's funny.
It's lifted straight out of the comics. That's the great thing. I mean, it is a complete...
I actually owned the comic that this was in, and you were absolutely right.
Yeah. I mean, it's. In fact, I think we should post on the Facebook page the actual image that this came from. So that's really cool. So is there anything that we want to comment here? I mean, it seems to me, if you're watching this film, the thing to look for is that last payoff, and also that it sets the tone, that the people in this one, unlike in some of the previous ones, you kind of get the impression everybody in this one really has it coming, and this guy he's not even out for revenge, You know, he's just a plumb bad dude, and then he crosses the wrong people. And by the way, once again, the brother and sister are played by an actual brother and sister, the children of Raymond Massey, who I know as the bad guy from Arsenic and Old Lace. And
right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting is
they're not Boris Karloff in Arsenic and Old Lace.
He's the guy who they kept joking looked like Boris Karloff.
Well, because in the play it was Boris Karloff.
Is
but
that
when
so?
it came time to film, yeah. But when it became time to film the movie, Karloff didn't want to take time off from the play to film the movie.
Wow! Thank you very much.
So they got Raymond Massey. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
For all your Boris Karloff trivia needs.
We're so glad for it, too.
Excellent. Okay. The next one, so by the way, that one was from Tales from the Crypt number 35. So that's where we'll look to find.
Despite the fact that, it has a horrific ending, and by the way, he really has it coming, again, this is not, I think we said when we saw Tales from the Crypt that just seemed almost like a kind of a nasty kind of movie in a lot of ways, and kind of, this is so much more gleeful. It's people. We weren't sure about some of the people who kind of caught their end, in some of the other movies that we've seen. It's a very clear line of demarcation where you go, okay, these guys are really bad, so you can sort of be in on the joke and enjoy it, and very much the way you watch it unfold, because you just knew going in there were no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and it really just unfolded in front of you, and something about that kind of made it, charming in its own way. So it didn't feel like it was, quite as. It sounds like it seemed like it was a little more. I hate to say this, a little more real at times, or a little more ambiguous, and because of it, you were going, I don't know. It kind of feels kind of nasty. It's almost like it's got an attitude, it's sort of. It's just got an attitude that I don't like. But this actually had a charm to it that, I think made the movie in a lot of ways. And this particular segment is one of the ones that's, I think, a hallmark of that. Probably because it hits so close to the actual comic.
Yes, yeah, that whole thing. Bad in the world of EC Comics, people who do bad things are tempting the fates and will be met with horrendously crazy payoffs. I mean, that you commit murder to steal an old man's gold, and by gum, you're going to get eaten by spiders. It's just weird things that often have nothing whatsoever to do with whatever crime you committed. It's just that there's no such thing as wrong place, wrong time in the best EC comic stories. Basically, you are there because you did bad things, and there's kind of like a hungry spirit out there that wants to eat people, and the best people to eat are those who commit, sins of various kinds. It is a morality aimed at. I've often said this. It's aimed at 12-year-olds or the 12-year-olds inside all of us.
Oh, that's good.
And right now, I'm looking at the screen in my little office, and Terry Thomas is putting on a pair of pink undies, and that brings us to the story The Neat Job, which came from Shock Suspense Stories, which is kind of a groovy portmanteau its own. Shock Suspense Stories, number 1, The Neat Job. This one is about Terry Thomas, who's one of the guys in the elevator down there smoking cigars and just hanging out with Doctor Who and the rest of the guys. And his story, his dream, everybody presents this as, I've been having the most amazing, completely believable dream. He is a neat freak. He's done quite well. He's made a lot of money. He's bought a really boring like ranch-style home somewhere.
It looks like the Brady Bunch show.
It is crazy, and I have a feeling it probably was quite hip at the time, but now it just looks like it's such a boring house. I mean, it's a very modern house from the outside. It's got brick, it's got yellow paint, and on the inside, it's extremely, modern. His fireplace is, it's like aluminum, I guess. It's that big aluminum sort of scoop thing.
What's the most 70s looking house I think I've ever seen, if nothing else?
I mean, I want this house now.
Is it 70s America or it's not like 70s UK?
70s America, yeah.
It looks more American. It doesn't look like what I think of being English, but which is funny because that actor, I always feel like if you were to draw a picture of a stereotyped Englishman, that is the guy that you would draw.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Terry Thomas was the picture of you know, like when Frankie Avalon wanted to imitate an English person in whichever beach movie it was that he had to pretend to be both himself and also a British invasion singer, he imitated Terry Thomas. I mean, that sort of fastidious accents and everything. So this guy's done really well, but he's lonely enough, and so he's going to marry a girl that I don't know. I guess he gets her. He says, you know, I know a family that this is the most odd thing to hear a modern Western person say. But essentially he says, I need a wife and I know a family that doesn't have any money and their daughter is marriageable, so I'm going to marry her. I mean, that sounds like something that you would read like in a story from, you know, the 19th century about another country, other than Great Britain. But what are you going to do? He picks up this wife, she moves in, and then
she's supposed to be like this young ingenue, but the actress is actually 50 at this point.
Right, she's a completely appropriate age for Terry Thomas, for sure. Yeah. You know, and
I would assume she's like maybe 10 years younger than him, but maybe not. But yeah, I mean, they do make like a business of talking about how she's, you know, younger than him, but it doesn't appear to be by much.
No, I don't think that she's inappropriately younger. I mean, not as played by this actress.
She actually is about 12 years younger than him in real life. So
right.
I mean,
and that's appropriate. I mean, I think we can all get behind that.
But anyway, the idea that she's like this, I mean, you know, that she just needs to find a husband. Yeah. It's kind of funny, given that she's 50. It's like, really? That's. I think maybe that was. No,
you're exactly right. And by the way, her Wikipedia picture is from 1952. She's gorgeous. But there you go.
Well, she's not an unattractive middle-aged woman here. Yeah, but. You know, like, I just imagine, like, I've never actually seen the comics for this, but I can just only imagine what the character in the comic book looked like because of the way most of the women in EC Comics were usually depicted.
Yeah, they're usually sort of va-va-voom girls, right? But here, she's so sweet. This woman, you really want to protect her because she's so sort of wide-eyed and small and desiring to make Terry Thomas happy as he explains his stupid checkmark system so that he never runs out of tomatoes.
Well, yeah, and we won't take too much time with it because we've already spent a lot of time and we've got 3 more stories. But basically, he's completely obsessive. He's like sleeping with the enemy guy. I mean, he's so obsessive. And so she wants so badly to please him, but then there's this sequence where everything just starts going wrong, and like she just starts spilling things and then running, and everything she does makes it worse. So then she goes down to his perfectly immaculate shop to fix something that had come off the wall, and so she messes everything up there, and he walks in and he sees her and he's like,
can you do anything neatly?
She's got a hammer in her hand because she's going to go hammer the thing. Yeah. And he's like, can't you do anything neatly? Can't you do anything neatly? Can't you do anything? Like, he's just yelling at her, and she just screams and whacks him on the head with the hammer. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, dude, you don't holler at somebody who's holding a hammer.
I agree. He's insane to be like shouting at her. You know, you really feel bad.
Well, I mean, I think this is sort of an amped up version of an argument that a lot of couples actually have.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, pumped up to ridiculous levels.
Yeah,
this is actually probably my favorite story out of the bunch. And, you know, because it is so perfectly EC Comics in tone. Like they really nail that here. Yeah. Like I you know, outside of you know, some of the episodes of the TV show and some of the stuff in Creep Show, I would say, like, if you wanted to show, like, a live-action EC comic, I felt like this really just, it's flawless in execution. Like, the character, like, both of the actors really kind of get the sensibility that they're going for. Like I said, she plays it so perfectly innocent, and, you know, he's just so over the top and how much of a neat freak he is.
Yeah, and when you know, and I love, by the way, that the cascade of events where everything starts to fall apart begins because she leaves a ring on the coffee table because she put down her glass of vodka or whatever it is. And it leaves a ring, and when she goes to try to clean that up, it starts this cascade of events that winds up with her practically destroying the house. And it's wonderful. I mean, that's just really, really cool. But yes, she winds up slicing him up and putting his different bits of his body into jars. It is so this would never happen in real life. I mean, I presume, I hope, you know. But
you say that.
Well, I mean, certain things like this have happened, but it's just so incredibly strange, and that's what's weird here is how these stories will just sort of jump.
Well, and she's previously shown no deviant behavior.
Right.
Like, and this is what she does is the sort of thing a psychopath would do, which is completely dissect the body and put everything in perfectly labeled, neat jar. It's like Jeffrey Dahmer, you know. Like it's just such an insane thing to do, but it does really. The presentation is just so EC Comics.
Well, and we often use these words to describe these stories when we're kids, anyway. You know, that she was driven mad, that the experience of this or that or the other thing caused her to snap, and after that she was crazy, which isn't really how actual people confronting actual mental illness experience things. But in these stories, that's how it happens. You know, you finally have listened to that guy push you around too many times, and now you are capable not only of killing him in a sudden moment of rage, but also doing this incredibly bizarre activity like pickling his entire body, including the odds and ends, which I just think is the most delightful detail here.
Grisly or gruesome. That as well.
It is. So yes, so that's Terry Thomas in jars. We leave him. We jump back to the frame story, and everybody else are like, well, that's a heck of a story. And Kurt Jurgens says, I have a story of my own. And this is an older man. I don't know where Jurgens is from. I mean, obviously he's Scandinavian. And we now go to another country, which is kind of rare for Amicus Pictures. We go to India, so-called. But we go to India. Kurt Jurgens and his spouse are traveling looking for a new trick that will really set the live magic world on fire because he's a nightclub magician. And so the reason we know he's going to get what's coming to him at first is that there's a guy who's doing some sleight of hand, and Kurt Jurgens walks up and exposes all the tricks to everybody in the crowd, which is a jerky thing to do.
Yeah, it's pretty jerky. He was actually born in Germany, by the way.
Oh, he's German. Okay, all right. So we're like, well, this guy's a total jerk. And there's this girl, Jasmina Hilton. He sees her the next night, and she's doing a trick that involves a magic flute, where with a flute and a rope and a basket, and she plays the flute, and the rope comes out like a cobra at first, and it rises into the air, and then she's able to climb it. And so he's like, now that's a cool trick. And
she's not even doing it for anyone. She's just kind of doing it in the back room.
Yeah. She's just doing it. He comes to her and she goes, I want that. And she goes, not for sale at any price. It is an old magic that exists in my family. And so he's like, well, clearly we got to kill this girl. And so he invites her up to the hotel room, supposedly to do the trick for his ill spouse. And they murder her. And I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible, this notion that there are these post-colonial white people who go to India and they think that these people are so beneath them that they're worth just murdering for intellectual property, interestingly enough. And so they kill her, and they immediately I think they stuffed the body into the closet. And they immediately set about trying to do the trick, which after a short time they're actually able to do, and then it gets very, very strange. Adam, do you want to tell us the payoff, like how the payoff works out?
Sure. So, if I remember correctly, what happens is, they actually can do the trick. They set up the trick, and basically, I think it's the sister, basically.
Was it the
basically,
sister or
Sebastian,
the wife?
So the guy plays the flute, and then the rope, finally does its thing, and then his sister climbs it, and then she disappears, and there's a scream.
Yes.
And there's this blood on the ceiling, and then in again really short order, the rope becomes suddenly murderous, and then also strangles the brother. Yeah. And
I think you think they're siblings? I thought they were spouses.
I actually thought they were married too.
Yeah, I think maybe they are.
Okay.
Yeah, he and his wife, it says in the wiki.
Okay, well anyway, but it doesn't matter because they're male and a female, but yes, precisely.
So it strangles him, and then he's hanging from this rope. But it appears that we find out moments later that the girl that they killed actually isn't dead. Yeah.
It was all an elaborate illusion, apparently somehow, to get Kurt Jurgens. I guess because he was such a dick to the sleight of hand artist in the street, that this is a thing that they set up, I guess, just for him, so that he would, so that he would steal this trick and do whatever he was going to do to wind up doing, and it would end up getting, basically just sort of giving them what they generally deserve. And
so the thing about this is, it's one thing if somebody's a big jerk. Terry Thomas was kind of a big jerk, but he kind of lost his cool. So he was killed and put in little jars. Really, very obviously, I think when I was saying brother and sister, I think it just came from the first movie. So I was just still thinking about that.
Yep.
Clearly the brother in the first segment deserved to have a wine tap put in his neck, and basically drunk by a town of vampires because he was murderous and obviously a psychopath. But what's interesting is you kind of look at this and you go, wait, so he apart from the fact that he did deserve it because he killed this girl, or they killed this girl. You think back and you go, wait, they've been somehow maybe planning this for a while because he was such a big jerk. You go, did he deserve this for being a big jerk, or did he deserve this because actually he was a bad person and they could see he was a bad person? You know what I mean? It's like
and clearly he's willing to commit murder. So maybe they, maybe they knew that when given the opportunity he would commit murder. And
it makes sense. Just when you think about it for any longer, you go, the order of events, you go, well, I mean, it's somehow fate deals him. It's almost like fate then deals him the card that he deserves. But it seems hard to think of it as sort of premeditated and like a priori and kind of like, well, unless he has a history of murdering people, which I suppose he could. But you're not really sort of told that. But he still deserves it, and you still feel satisfaction in the end, which in the end is really all you care about.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, it's not
and it's exotic.
that shocking.
I mean, it's also exotic.
Yes,
which is nice.
Yeah, you've got another country, where most of the Amicus stories are always it's 1972, or 1968 or whatever it is, and it's in some little flat in an urban area. And in this case, two people are on holiday in India, and that's kind of exotic. I have to say, the notion of the girl climbing the rope and then disappearing into some space beyond the ceiling and then blood seeping back, that's a really, really, really eerie image.
Well, it's very Lovecraft at that point. I mean, it's very Lovecraftian. You kind of go, oh, well, clearly she's kind of in the from beyond world, and that's not so good.
the idea of blood seeping in from beyond is a really strange and horrific.
Well, it's like Poltergeist, where for some reason there's like this interdimensional.
Well, that's another thing. I got a total Poltergeist vibe, and I don't know if Tobe Hooper actually was thinking of this when he gave us that rope that goes up into the ceiling and disappears, or if it's a complete coincidence. Yeah. I mean, do I believe that Tobe Hooper had probably seen Vault of Horror? I mean, of course. It's hard to imagine him not having seen it. But so I don't know. I don't know if he consciously was quoting that or not, but it certainly is called back in Poltergeist. So the next one, actually, I mean, I don't think we have to spend too much time on Bargain and Death, but we should mention it. Well, unless you guys have something really to talk about it. But this one is from Tales of the Crypt number 28. So this gentleman, Michael Craig, he has a plan. He's in over his head. He's going to do a scheme where he's going to profess to have a heart attack. He's going to take a drug that will give him a heart attack, and then he's working with a friend. He's going to wind up buried, and then his friend will come dig him up, and at about the time that he revives, and then they'll run off and share the insurance money that he will collect, and that's the plan. And that makes it a very Hitchcockian plan. In fact, I could have sworn, Joy, you were saying that this plot actually was in an episode of Hitchcock, right?
Well, no, it's similar to the one, because there's a wonderful plot where there's a woman who's in jail, and she's going to escape. She's going to escape jail by having the guy, the great, I guess it's the gravedigger, maybe the doctor, I don't know. Anyway, somebody's supposed to whenever the next body is going to be buried, she will sneak into the coffin with it, and then this person will, whoever it was that she talked to, will dig her up. But the problem is that when she gets buried with the next body, it's the body of the guy who's supposed to dig her up.
Yeah.
He's in there with her. And so, anyway, I thought that's what this was going to be, but it ended up being different.
No, so
that is good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, and not a bad payoff for I can't remember if those were 30-minute episodes or 45-minute episodes, but yeah, that was from the original Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And they remade that story, actually, in the 1980s version of Hitchcock Presents as well. But anyway, who we actually... And we see him, in fact, reading the Tales from the Crypt novelization before his heart attack kicks in. Anyway... it just so happens that I'm trying to figure out how this works. We've got
so you got these two med student guys who are like, gosh, if only we had our own body to work with.
Yes.
And then they live in this house with this guy. I guess they're
in the same house as Maitland, the guy who's going to fake his own death. Yeah. So they're the ones who run up and find him when he's had a heart attack.
Yeah.
So now they have a plan that they're going to get his body. So now you have ostensibly, that's right, there's now ostensibly two people going looking for Maitland's body, except for that one of them has decided he's not going to do it. The friend who was in on the insurance scam.
Well, he was never going to do it.
So long, sucker, I'm not going to bother. And he actually ends up getting into a car accident, so it doesn't matter for him. But
well, he gets into a car accident, and but that happens later. So the boys are going to go dig up the body. They go ahead and have the burial, but then they're going to go dig up the body. And so in the meantime, the guy who's buried has woken up from this, drug that's made him seem like he was dead. And he lights the match. He's like, oh, I'm running out of air. Hopefully my buddy Alex or whatever is going to be here soon. And meanwhile, this guy is like driving away. And so the guy...
The car crash, I don't think it ends up really amounting to anything other than that he ends up dying, which I guess he deserved to do in the world of EC because he was going to commit insurance fraud.
No, but the boys see it. They see the car crash is the only thing. but I mean that's all.
That's just the twisted. They run away because they're shocked because Maitland wakes up. So it's this funny sort of comedy of.
Right. Well, I love the. Speaking of comedic characters, the gravedigger guy cracked me up. He was so funny. He was just like, I don't know. He just seemed amused by everything, and just kind of like, okay, well, I guess we're doing this. Like it's like something he does every day. Digs the people back up.
Yeah.
So he digs the guy back up. He opens the grave. The guy pops up. The two boys run away. The gravedigger kills the dude all over again.
Right, and that's the final payoff.
Yeah.
Is that we saw that Maitland actually survived, but then he's immediately killed by the gravedigger. Perhaps in shock, perhaps just because the gravedigger wants them to have the bodies they asked for.
No, it's not. No, I'm sure it's shock. I'm sure he's like, oh crap, zombie.
It could be. He says, well, here's your body, and I'm sorry for the damage to the head.
Yeah.
And he has cleaved in the head of Mr. Maitland. So it's weird because this is a quick little story. I mean, it's fine, but I could have lost this story entirely.
Yeah, it's not my favorite for sure.
Yeah.
If I'm giving a short shrift, I apologize. But this one, I'm not saying it's a terrible story. It's just that it doesn't have too many motifs to make it really memorable. Whereas the others usually have some really memorable image. In this, the closest you come to something that really stands out is just the cool shot of this gentleman waking up inside of a coffin and burning a match. And so
well, this is the little comedy aperitif before going into the next one, which is a bit longer and a bit looks like there's always seems to be one that is a little meatier somehow than the rest. Maybe not always, they're not known for that particular one. But, in all the ones that we've seen, I think there's always been one that sort of stood out. And this one, I think, certainly gets a little more screen time, or at least it feels like it. And
you're talking about the Tom Baker one coming next.
Right. So this might be just a little
sort
set
it up for us. If you have it in your head.
I'm going to let, this is Julia's favorite, so I'm going to let her do it.
So let's see. What's it called again?
This is called Drawn and Quartered.
Drawn and Quartered. Yeah, it's not my favorite, but I did really enjoy it because I love. I like Tom Baker first of all, and then I liked that he's this painter who has been living in Haiti, and he finds out from someone that he runs into that he knows that these art dealer guys have taken advantage of him and have been making all this money off of his art, and he's not seeing any of it. So rather than think, how can I make money off this? His immediate thought goes
to they're torrenting his art. I just want to lay that into proper perspective.
We've come full circle. Yes. Can I just mention though, really quickly, before you take him to London, I just want to point out that Tom Baker's character, who is an artist, is living in paradise. He has you can hear the ocean on the dunes outside of the cabin in which he paints all day.
But he's poor. He has no air conditioning. He probably doesn't have a lot of...
But if he were rich, he would eventually hope to get enough money to
have air conditioning in Haiti. To have air conditioning.
Listen, if he had money, he'd go to Tahiti. He wouldn't actually be in Haiti.
He wouldn't be in Haiti. So anyway, so he's there.
Voodoo.
But rather than think, how can I make some money myself, he thinks, I just want to get revenge on these jerks that took advantage of me. And so he immediately goes to the voodoo priest and says, I want voodoo. And he's like, I want to buy voodoo. And the guy's like, okay, put your hand in this boiling cauldron. And he's like, okay, I'll do that. And then he's like, okay, you have voodoo now. And he's like, what? And he's like, don't I need the dollars and thing? He says, no, you don't need that because you're a painter. And so he goes back and he pretty quickly clues into the idea that because he's painting a still life, and then he rips up the still life that he painted, and the vase falls down and breaks. So he pretty quickly comes to the conclusion that, whatever I do to the paintings that I make, that happens to the thing that's in painting. And so he goes to London and he creates paintings of all these people who've taken advantage of him, and each of them he destroys in a different way, and so they all meet these horrible.
Yeah.
The guy, there's one in particular where he paints the guy and then he tears off the bottom part of the painting. I thought the guy was going to be cut in half, but it was just his hands get cut off by this like paper cutter guillotine thing. And that was just, I thought that was kind of funny. I don't know why. I guess I've become warped by this podcast. But there's just each of these guys that he has something horrible happen to him based on what he's written. But then, like, of course, he made a painting of himself, which I'm not clear on why exactly he did that. And he put it in a safe, but he's being smothered because he's run out of air. The safe has run out of air. So he realizes, oh, crap, I can't breathe. I got to go let the painting out of the safe.
Yeah.
And puts it out, and then goes back to do something. And somebody is painting a billboard above, like
above the studio.
Yeah, above the studio, and he has a skylight, and the guy drops the turpentine through the skylight, and it destroys the painting of Tom Baker. And so Tom Baker gets hit by a truck and gets his head run over by the tires. It's a complete. It's so weird. It's a weird story.
There's other than the image of the painting, kind of the half melted face, and I love the notion of a guy that does not need a doll to perform voodoo because he's a painter. But I just don't like this part of the movie. It was so dull to me. Like
really?
It was so. I was fighting.
Like
I was
this
fighting
the
to
extra
stay
one,
awake. I think that they could have. It's funny because essentially, Tom Baker in the wraparound story is the one that gets everybody talking about their dreams. So he plays a very important role. I sort of wish that they had just let him be like the somehow be the Dr. Diablo of this movie and give him a slightly more flamboyant character to play, because I really just do not. I feel like you could have cut this story. It detracts from my overall enjoyment of the rest of the movie.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you would feel that way, because this one really works for me more so than the last one, which I thought was. Although Adam says, it's a short comedy, and that's kind of fine. But I really liked this one. I don't know. I enjoyed the goofiness of each of his ways of getting revenge. I enjoyed how absurd it was that he immediately thinks, well, I'm going to go to London and figure out crazy ways of killing these people. It's like a 20-minute Vincent Price. In fact, I could swear that this is a Vincent Price movie. That there's a movie with Vincent Price where he goes to get revenge on a bunch of art critics who have ripped him off or something like that. That does sound very familiar. Maybe it's Theater of Horrors that I'm thinking of. Anyway, okay, but I totally accept that. The other thing, Drew, that sets this one off in my mind is that there's the visuals of Haiti. Again, it's a fake Haiti. I mean, this is all Haiti that's built entirely inside, Twickenham Studios. But it just looks so gorgeous to me with the palm trees and the ocean up there and all that stuff that I dig that. But
it's this Theater of Blood is the movie you're thinking of.
Ah, yes. Well, very good.
Shakespearean actor takes poetic revenge on the critics who denied him recognition.
See? There you go.
Good job.
But okay, I mean, so and Drew, did you also feel like there's one problem is the fact that there's 5 stories instead of 4, or do you think it would have been okay if it were a better story?
Drew?
I may have lost Drew.
All right.
Well, actually, what's? Hang on. Hey, it looks like I muted you two, and I apologize.
Hi, actually,
Did you unmute me? Did you unmute me?
Yeah, he's muted both of us now. Jason's been carrying the show.
Yeah, okay. So, my problem isn't that there's 5 stories. My problem is the last story is trudges along like a snail. I feel like all of the acting in it is very lifeless. Even Tom Baker, who is usually kind of a very interesting actor to watch. I feel like is just kind of plays the whole thing. I guess he figured like, oh, I'm playing a painter, so I'm going to be a broody painter, and you know, I'm going to act very sullen. But I don't know. The story just didn't work for me. I think maybe it's a length thing, but you know, I think if they had come out with like a more interesting final story, I don't think I would have mattered to me. I don't like how many. I mean, there's other anthologies that have this many stories, and it doesn't bother me. I just
also was did this happen when Tom Baker was somehow, you know, at what point before or after he became a businessman, you see a painter? I mean, I know it's a dream or whatever, but I was kind of like, hey, wait a minute. Everybody else is sort of doing their thing, but he's a painter in Haiti.
Yeah, right. Well, he did come back to London and buy a studio to do his painting of these bad guys so that he could kill them. So, in theory, and by the way, how broke is he? Well, maybe he rents this studio.
And it doesn't matter. You're talking about why is he in the basement?
Why is he in the big building? Yeah.
Because that's just hell. I mean, it's not a real thing. It's not like they have to actually.
Well, okay, fair enough. But I still bought Adam's question. Okay, so I have to point out there's the ending frame story. Now here's the funny thing. There is a shot that gets used in a lot of books that shows all of them going out of they exit this area and they walk out into the graveyard, and that's stuff that we see. Okay, the door finally opens and they all sort of just trudge out. They as though they're aware of what they're supposed to do. I love this. This is a very, very satisfying thing for me, is that they all just sort of head on, into
very much like the people who are in Tales from the Crypt. They just sort of go.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right.
It's just not that dissimilar.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, there's something kind of cool about the notion that these people who are dead, when suddenly presented, there's something folkloric here, that when presented with the reality of their situation, they sort of get in line. And
well, this was better. We didn't like it, I don't think, when Tales from the Crypt was on. This somehow plays better.
Yeah.
And
Kurt Jürgen actually gives us a story. He tells us, he says, in fact, what you've been watching is something that happens every night, that these unhappy spirits gather each night and relate their stories until it's revealed that they're dead, and then they wander back into the graveyard. What a groovy idea.
It's like they remember at that point. And if you watch Doctor Who, which I've been advocating, that was kind of the thing that happened with the Doctor in a couple episodes ago, where he's stuck in this like hell dimension of that his people have created for him, and he always lives the same thing over and over and over until the end. He remembers at that point that he's done this. At the end, he's actually done it for 4.5 billion years.
Right.
But he has every day he forgets, and he does it again until the end, and he remembers nothing.
Well, in the realm of pop sci-fi, this is actually a favorite plot.
Yeah.
I mean, you name any genre show, and they've done it at least once. I think Buffy did it. Next Generation did like one of the best I've ever seen. Which was Cause and Effect, where they keep colliding with another ship until they figure out. How not to collide with the other ship.
Well, that was a good one.
Kelsey Grammer's ship,
it takes them like weeks to realize that they're reliving the same day over and over.
They don't even know. No, I think they do find out how long it is. Well, the Kelsey Grammer ship has been in it for years and years and years.
Yes. So anyway, that's a common motif. So that's what's going on here, except for that they're never going to they're not actually alive, so they're never going to snap out of it. This one's mystical. It gives me chills. I really like that. But anyway, there's a shot that gets used in a lot of books and websites and stuff, a publicity photo that has all 5 of them going out, but their clothes are tattered and their faces are kind of rotted away. They look like zombies. And I have nobody, it's clearly a deleted scene because it's not even part of the so-called R-rated cut that Joy and I have on Blu-ray. It's maybe it was never to be used, or maybe it was shot as a scene and then not used. Kurt Jürgen is not in the publicity image where they all look like zombies, so I don't know. This remains a mystery as to what the hell that image is of. But I really do love them wandering into the graveyard. So that brings us probably to we should have our final thoughts on Vault of Horror and anything else that we want to talk about. And I'm curious actually what you guys think. Actually, before we do final thoughts, I want to know, so this was our third Amicus picture. We're going to do one more. It's actually going to be after Christmas, but so we'll take a little break. But this is our third Amicus picture, and how are you guys feeling so far about? Because I feel personally responsible for dragging you into all of this. So how are you? How is it sitting with you?
Well, I think that it's kind of like I'm kind of looking at like a TV series, because it's the same thing every time. It's always these people who have died and they don't know they're dead, and here's their stories. And so, I mean, it's not like any of it's going to be like, oh wow, this is really different. But it's entertaining, and it's it's like Tales of the Crypt show or Night Gallery or Twilight Zone. You're just kind of watching stories, and some of them are great, some of them are okay, and some of them are kind of dumb. Yeah, but it's okay. It's great.
What's interesting though is that I still think Torture Garden still deviates from that course because they're still alive, and they have the opportunity to, it's even sort of doubly moral in the sense of that they can somehow take steps to avoid this, and some will, and some won't. Some will just embrace a deal with Dr. Diablo, and that's that's sort of interesting, as opposed to having this being these familiar turns where these are all spirits that have already demised, and now they are doomed to sort of relive this over and over and over. I know there's something rather nice about it being something that is they're actually living people, and that and this is a possible future. And it's interesting.
I have to say, like, I definitely I agree with Julia on the TV analogy, and that it's just sort of a mixed bag, and there's good and there's bad. But you're essentially like watching Twilight Zone, and some of them are better than others. But I will say this: I still enjoy Torture Garden the best, which is strange because I dearly love EC Comics. And I feel like the two that we've done that are adaptations of EC Comics are not nearly as accomplished as Torture Garden is. That being said, I did enjoy Vault of Horror quite a bit. It's been a while since I've seen it. I think it does capture the EC Comics spirit a lot better, while still feeling very much of the Amicus, at least what I've come to understand the Amicus vibe is. Yeah. And I've enjoyed it. So some of the stories are definitely better than others, but
sure.
It would be interesting to see if you could revive Amicus as a brand now, the way they've revived Hammer.
I want to say that, just as they've tried to revive Hammer many times before, now it's working. So I think they've tried with Amicus at least once. I don't know. The problem is, until one of those things hit, rich guys can buy these brands for almost nothing and at least give it a shot. So I don't know. I would love if they would revive Amicus and actually do the Amicus thing, with the anthology horror films. But I couldn't even tell you. I have no marketing data at all. I have no idea if people want to see anthologies or if they don't. If that's a popular.
Well,
you've seen True Detective, and in some way that is definitely sort of an anthology series. Not quite as direct as this, but I think there is an appetite. Or you watch
American Horror Story is the same
American Horror Story
concept.
Right.
That's
I think
true.
there is an appetite for that.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, that's if you brought it to this new television concept of anthology, where you have a long story that then the anthology aspect of it is some of the same crew but a new story each season. That's True Detective and that's American Horror Story. But I mean, like, also we did watch that anthology from about 3 or 4 years ago, Trick or Treat, and that was really just like this, except for that all they did was just slice the stories into scenes and then spread it out so that it could create one feature film that had certain characters like wandering through. You know, just like Pulp Fiction. When you think about it, you could take Pulp Fiction and slice bits of the narrative up and turn it into a sort of anthology movie.
Yeah.
So that's another fun idea here. And Amicus never bothered with anything like that as a through line, except for in the Frame story. But yeah, I don't know. I would love to see more. If you said to me, "Hey, this Friday there's going to be a new horror anthology opening up," I would totally go. And you know what? People are probably going to write to our Facebook page and go, "Jason, don't be a jackass. These 3 have opened in the last year, and I bet you didn't watch any of them." And that often happens. You know, you miss stuff, and so I'd love to hear if there's new portmanteaus that.
Well, there was a Christmas horror anthology that came out. I haven't seen it, but it did come out. I think it's called Terror Tales of Christmas or something like that. So,
well, I could swear that there was another one called like Tales of Halloween that came out just recently. So it's very possible that I actually need to get caught up on recent portmanteaus and see how they're doing. Okay, so let's get our final thoughts on Vault of Horror, to the extent that we haven't already shared it. We went Julia, and then Drew, Adam, and then I'll go. So Julia, final thoughts, Vault of Horror.
I think I already pretty much said everything I wanted to say about it. It was fun.
Okay. All right. Drew, do you have anything else you want to share?
I liked this movie. Like I said, I think they accomplish the EC Comics vibe a lot better in this. I don't like the last story at all, but, it still found it to be worth watching.
Excellent. Adam, do you have anything to share?
I agree. It's completely worth watching. It's really better than most. I think it's deserving of its place, obviously, in Amicus and on this podcast. So, really glad that we saw it. So, in a lot of ways, I like it far more than Tales from the Crypt. So, I think it's definitely of a time, and I'm being able to sort of compare it to, if there's a trajectory to this, the next picture that you have in the lineup will be sort of interesting. Just to sort of see how I don't know if the next one is before or after this.
Well, it's before, but they're all so close together. The House That Dripped Blood is next, and
okay.
And it's going to be, it's just from like a year and a half earlier. So.
But if you were to sort of watch Asylum or something like that, which I think was being shot around the same time, it'd be interesting to sort of compare those and see attitudinally kind of where they were. Yeah. So it would be sort of, I would encourage people on their own to sort of watch it. And I happen to like Asylum, possibly because I really like Herbert Lom. So I think that's certainly an interesting movie. But yeah, I think this was terrific. Again, I can watch Torture Garden. You've heard it here. I can watch Torture Garden all day long, which is a ridiculous thing to say. But it is definitely a favorite, and this is not my favorite, but it was good. Yeah, I to an extent, except for that it would grow really tiresome to do all 7 Amicus pictures. It's hard to just pick 4 because it means you're leaving half of them undone, But I enjoy this one a lot. It makes a perfect sort of set piece with Tales from the Crypt, and I'm really happy that we're going to wrap up with another one that's not one of the ones based on EC Comics, which is The House That Dripped Blood, and see if there's much difference. One thing I do remember is that Joan Collins is back, and if I recall, she has a groovy shag carpet, and I think that she's like caught in some kind of jealous duel with an angry tree. That's all vaguely coming back to me. So I can't wait to return for The House That Dripped Blood. We should do endorsements, and I will
while somebody else is talking, I will try and think of if I have anything to endorse. I've been very heads down over the last week or so I don't know if I'll have anything. So does anybody have anything to endorse? I can throw it out.
Obviously, the new Star Wars movie is coming out this weekend, so
yeah.
we've got to. If having not seen it yet, we have to mention that.
They made a new Star Wars movie?
It's a little picture.
How can they possibly follow Return of the Jedi?
They haven't promoted it very much. So I'm not surprised that you haven't heard about it, but yeah.
Surely they weren't able to get Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford to come back. I just don't believe that.
And the question is, were they able to get Mark Hamill to come back? Because where is he in the previews? It's not there.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, it's exciting. So
where's Lando?
That was my question. Is apparently the only guy they can't get is Billy D. Williams? That doesn't sound right. So I don't know what's going on.
They got to save something for the next chapter.
Oh, well said. Well said. So, yeah. So, Drew, did you have anything to endorse?
Well, I do, but I was actually supposed to be Adam next.
Oh, is it supposed to be Adam next? All right, then I apologize.
All right. Gee, thanks. Aziz Ansari is funny again. I was actually watching Master of None, and he's actually, it's sort of like his Louis. I mean, yeah, it's actually really funny. So it's nice to see because, I was watching his stand-up and certainly liked his earlier stuff, but I sort of found, and other people sort of found, like, okay, it's not really, it's more the same, but not really kind of moving on. But this seems like it's really cool. So I think he just needed a vehicle that was not just his stand-up. So it's nice to see. It's not genre, but it's still interesting.
Oh, it's so good. I love Master of None. I just shot through it. I couldn't put it down. So that's a really good thought. Drew, did you have anything?
I am selfishly endorsing my own comic book, and I'm selfishly endorsing that you pay for it.
Buy it.
Comixology. Piracy hurts people. Like, I don't care what Neil Gaiman says. Yeah, like Neil Gaiman, I love you, but you're wrong. I work really hard. My creative team works really hard. I have, by my estimation, a very good indie comic. You can get almost all of it on Comixology very cheaply, and you should go on Comixology. You should look up Halloween Man. You should look at the specials. You should look at the regular series. You could buy the collected edition. There's so much that you could check out. If you've been listening to this podcast, Lord knows you've heard us talk about it enough. Maybe you should go out and check out Halloween Man and go, man, what have I been missing? This is really good. This is my new favorite comic book series. And every fan counts. Every fan counts. So please check out Halloween Man. I'm selfishly endorsing myself. I don't feel bad about that.
Yeah. No. If you have any, I personally believe if you have any art out there that's on the shelves right now, it is always worth plugging. Absolutely. Anybody who sits on the couch on Tonight Show, they always end plugging their own work. If you have anything that's not your work that you want to plug, that's good too. But totally, you can plug your own work.
Not this week. I'm keeping it strictly. This is probably going to be my last shameless plug of 2015. So read Halloween Man. It's worth paying actual money for. It's actually good enough to where you will want to pay for it and you will not feel ripped off.
Excellent. All right. So I don't have anything on the shelves right now. I'm going to have something to announce in the next 6 weeks or so, but nothing just yet. So what I will, I loved Master of None. Two new things that I've been watching. Well, one I've been reading. Archie, the new Archie comic written by Mark Waid, is one of the best things I've read in years. So this, honest to God, from Archie Comics, there is a new continuing series by Mark Waid, the Mark Waid, Kingdom Come. It is so good. It reinvents the relationships of Archie, Betty, and Veronica and Jughead It makes them into believable young people without being really dark and bitter or nasty young people. It's a nice story. It's really good. I've been enjoying it. My girls have been enjoying it. So I absolutely have been digging the new Archie series comic, and it's on issue 4 right now. The other thing that is new, I have to say that telenovela is pretty funny, actually. That's a brand new NBC show about the people who work on a Spanish language soap opera. And so,
with Eva Longoria.
So right. So neither of my things are genre either, you know. But that's where I'm landing. It's pure comedy right now. So, all right. Well, I really appreciate you guys being on. Here's the thing. We got one more Amicus picture, but it's going to be after Christmas. So we're probably going to be gone for, I believe, a couple of weeks. But we will be back to wrap up Amicus and then to start a new retrospective that we have yet to announce because, oh, wait, is it going to be Stepford-wise? Maybe Stepford-wise.
I thought it was going to be Stepford-wise.
Yeah, so, okay, well then, yes, Stepford-wise. We'll be back for a little bit more Amicus, and then it is Stepford-wise. We're going to watch some psychotic robotic women. I cannot wait.
Stepford children, right?
Yeah. Bring in Stepford butts!
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. And so that's going to be awesome. And if you are listening and you dig the show, then be sure and tell your friends and let your friends listen to it and leave reviews for us on iTunes. It actually helps people find the show. Come to the Facebook page, leave comments, ask questions. We will absolutely engage with you, and we really appreciate it. It means so much to us. We had like this really neat note on the Facebook page this week. This guy goes, I really look forward to listening to your show every week. And I'm like, wow. that is so awesome. So, okay. Have a fabulous week, everybody. Thank you.
And have a great Christmas and whatever else you celebrate this month. And enjoy Star Wars. May the Force be with you.
Yes.
You too.
Thanks, everybody.
Live long and prosper.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.